All right, class, how you doing? This is our chapter 3 homework review video. As you can see, it's broken up into a couple of different parts. We've got A, B, C, D, and E. You're probably starting to get pretty used to this division by now. And I just wanted to go through it like we did last week with chapter 2. And hopefully I've blown this up enough to where it's pretty visible. I don't think Microsoft Word's letting me zoom in any further. So I guess I could increase the font size if we needed to as well. Just let me know if it's not big enough. You can see the first thing, just like last week, you'll need to memorize the masculine paradigm and the neuter paradigm, which are very similar, right, to each other. You can see that in the textbook, and you'll want to write it out. Make sure to include the article and the English meaning. This is something I think I didn't really highlight last week and should have, but memorizing the meaning with the paradigm will be really helpful. This is going to be a good habit to get into. You're going to run into stuff like the verb paradigms later on and additional paradigms. There's a lot of paradigms, and you're going to run into them, and you're going to want to know what they mean along with the paradigm itself. So let's talk a little bit then. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about masculine nouns. So in this exercise, you need to identify the words that are masculine, including the articles. So that just means, it doesn't mean like to write the article so much as just to identify an article when you see it, determine what its gender is. We're looking for only for masculine here. So not for feminine, not for neuter, just masculine. And so in this first column, or first row, we have Adelphu, Theon, Ta, and Hemerai. Well, we can rule out a couple of these right away, right? We can rule out Ta, we can rule out Hemerai. We know that Ta is the neuter plural article, right, for nominative and accusative. And we know Hemerai, we should know this one, right? This is a first declension alpha pattern noun. We know it's feminine, so it obviously doesn't count. And that leaves these two over here. Well, Adelphu, right, which comes from Adelphos, is masculine. So this one is masculine. We know that, right? Because you should have memorized the lexical form, ha adelphos. If you memorize the article, it's pretty easy to identify what the gender is. And theon, right? It could be a little confusing, right? Maybe you see this omicron nu ending, and it makes you think of the neuter ending or the neuter not of the nominative and the accusative in the neuter paradigm. But in this case, theos is masculine in its root. We know ha theos is the root of that, so we know that is a masculine. Now here in row 2, we've got a couple of really interesting ones. And let's start again. I like the process of elimination. Maybe looking for ones we know for sure are not masculine. And we know technois is not, right? We know technois is a neuter, right? Ton technon or ta technon is the lexical form, ta technon, and then ta techna in the plural. So technois is the dative plural. And we know that the dative plural ending here, right, for the neuter and the masculine is the same, but this is nonetheless a neuter. That's of course because technon can refer to a boy child or a girl child, right? It's just generally the word for child. That leaves us with 3 options. And we'll start with the definite article here, tous. We know what this is, right? This is the accusative plural in both, actually not in both, in just the masculine, right? We know that this is masculine, not neuter. And it actually really helps us because we have ta right here. We have the neuter plural right here. And so we know that this is the masculine plural. And then namu, we know comes from namas, and ha namas. We know it's not ta naman, right? It's ha namas. So we know that's also masculine. Then we have huion, huion. We've got a genitive plural masculine noun here. Instead of ha huios, we just have huion. So we know that in this case, and this tells you right away, right? In our first line, we've got 2. In our second line, we've got 3. Now we have row 3, cardia, ha, aletheia, lagos. Well, this one should be pretty easy right away. We can knock out 2, right? We know cardia, there's our dative feminine singular. Aletheia, our nominative feminine singular. Those are both feminine. We know they're not right. And we know, we mentioned it a few times now, the neuter article is ta. We know the masculine is ha, kind of like its feminine counterpart. You have the eta with a rough breathing mark. Here you have a omicron with a rough breathing mark. There's a pattern here, ha and hey. So in this case, we know we have a masculine. And then lagos. Lagos. Well, we have this one on the board for us already, don't we? Because we have tous, right? We have tous. We already know we have the masculine accusative plural. And here with logos, we have it as well. We have it again, nice and easy to identify with logos. So that's just something to keep in mind here. Now in our next row, we've got a couple of options as well. We have anthropos, semeia, cosmo, and ta. Which ones are these? So we know one of the interesting things right away is we know there's only masculines and neuters in this column. You might say, wait a minute, JP, we have this alpha here. Don't we have alpha pattern nouns? Aren't those feminine? Remember, right? When we have a neuter and it's plural in either nominative or accusative, we get that signature alpha ending. You can see that right here with ta. You have the article. We know that semeion is the word ta semeion. We learned that in this chapter, or I guess we memorized it at the end of chapter 2 to prepare for this chapter. And so we know that's a neuter plural. We also have the neuter singular article here, ta, right? We know that in the masculine, it's ha. We know here it's ta. And remember, just as a reminder, it's the same for the nominative and the accusative. Well, we've eliminated those two, and then we see these, right? This one ends in an omega. It's cosmos. We have a masculine dative singular here from cosmos, similar to the English word cosmos. But in this case, we remember that omicron, we have that short O sound in our pronunciation. So to the world or for the world, right? Cosmo. And then we have anthropos. And to the men, right? So we know this is masculine. Ha, anthropos is the lexical form, right? That's the form that we start with from a dictionary, and we have a dative plural ending here. And so our two correct ones for this one are anthropos and cosmo. That brings us to our last column here, ergo, tois, hieron, Christou. So right away, I like the process of elimination approach. We remember hieron, right? Hieron is neuter. Hieron is neuter. Ta hieron, right? And that makes sense for a temple, for a building, physical structure. And we have a tricky one here with tois, right? Because this could be masculine and this could be dative. They're the same form in both the dative and the masculine. So I would go ahead and include this. And so this one we don't include. This one we do include. What about ergo? Well, we know that it's from our lexical form, right? If you memorized it with the article, ton ergon. We have that, or ta ergon, rather. We have that signature, tau omicron article. We know the plural of ergo is erga. Common phrase in Paul's writings is erga namu, works of the law. He says that a lot. And in this case, we know this is in fact a neuter. So far we've got this, which could be either or. We'll take it as masculine for now. And then we have Christou. And in the case of Christou, we have a masculine. It's a proper name, and so it's masculine in this particular case. Now, we have section C, the article. So we're looking to parse the noun, find examples in which the article doesn't match, just like we did last week with the alpha and the eta patterns in the first declension. And then we want to find what the correct article is. So our first option here, though, this one's pretty easy, right? We can see right away, to, theo, right? We have that long vowel ending here with the iota subscript. We know we have the right article. This is the form of the dative singular, to or for God. We're good to go. Now we have ton euangelion. Now this is an interesting one. Looks correct, right? Looks right. But we need to remember, right, that euangelion in Greek is in fact a neuter. It is in fact a neuter. Sorry about that. Somebody texted me. All right. Ta euangelion. So we know this is wrong. And we remember, right, that ta will be the same in the accusative and in the nominative. So there should be no new here. That's what we know. All right, our third option. Well, this one's pretty easy to suss out, right? We have high anthropoi. Well, we've got that signature masculine plural ending, but we've got a feminine plural nominative article. And they're both nominative. This is a nominative plural. This is a nominative plural, but it's masculine and this is feminine. So it should actually be hoi anthropoi, not hi anthropoi. Tu kuriu. Well, we've got that omicron upsilon diphthong here. We've got it here. And you might be inclined to say this is a match, and you'd be right. Of the Lord. That's what this means, of the Lord. So we've got tu kuriu. It's a match. It's a masculine genitive singular. Now we've got tone semeon. We've got a genitive plural article here, and we have a genitive plural ending. So they match. And this is a neuter. And of course, the article is the same for both. So that one's right. Tain namon. All right, what do we see? We got the signature omicron of the masculine paradigm. We know it's the masculine. We talked about it earlier. And we have the eta, the long A-class vowel that belongs to the feminine article. So this is a feminine accusative. This is a masculine accusative. So the article should be tan naman. Then we have ha huias. Another easy one for us, right? We have the typical ending of the masculine nominative singular, and we have the appropriate article here, ha huias. We know those match. Tais uranois. You can even hear it, right? You can hear it like there should be some degree of rhyme, right? It should be tois uranois, right? We have to theo. We should have hoi anthropoi, right? Tu kuriu, ton semeon, right? Ta naman, ha huias. That one's a little less rhyme scheme, but we have tais uranois. So we've got a feminine plural dative article, and we have a masculine dative plural ending. And so there should be tois uranois, tois uranois. To Jesu. To Jesu. Now, the way that Jesus' name declines is a little trickier, right? It's a little harder to remember. And it's partly because the declension of Jesus' name, I'm going to pull up Logos here. We might take just a moment to talk about Jesus' name, actually, while my software loads. If I was a really good teacher, I would have had this loaded for you already. But we can go ahead and we can search through the Greek New Testament. This is pretty cool. It's also a decent commercial, free press for Logos, right? So we can look for the word Jesu, right? We can look for Jesus' name in the New Testament with software like this. And we remember, right, that his name declines kind of in an interesting manner. So I just want to show you some examples from the New Testament just on this one. We have Matthew 1:18. We have the article here, tu Jesu, and this particle here just will always come second in a sentence. And so it just kind of naturally has to be inserted here. So tu Jesu. So we see what we might expect to see, right? A genitive for that ending. But then if you come down here, you'll see in Matthew 8:34, to Jesu. There it is again. You see that? There's a dative singular there. So in this case, it's kind of tricky, but this one is actually right. It actually is correct. And that leads us to our last one, ta erga. Now, if you remember, we were discussing this earlier, right? I mentioned erga namu is a common phrase in Paul's writings, works of the law. We know this is a neuter, and we know that this is the neuter article right here, if I can find it on my screen. And so we come down here to erga, and we have the neuter plural article, and we have got a neuter plural noun, could be accusative or nominative. Now we come down here to section D, circle the Greek word that best translates the English phrase. Line 1, for the Lord. For the Lord. We see right away, we've got a couple options here. Ton kurion, tu kurio, to kurio. This one shouldn't be too hard, right? We know this is of the Lord. This is our genitive. The Lord. This is our accusative. To or for the Lord. There's our dative right there. So it's that middle option. Of heaven. Of heaven. This one's interesting. We have ton uranon, to urano, and tu uranu. We can kind of rule out the dative, right? We have the to urano, we have our dative. We know it's 2 or 4 because we have another dative right here that we just saw. Now we've got two genitives. We've got our plural genitive of the heavens, and then just of heaven, right? Tu uranu is our winner. To the sons, we have huiois, hoi huioi, and tois huiois. Now, this one's interesting. It's worth paying attention to, right? To Sons. That would be huios right here. But remember, we have a definite article, and there's no article here. We have hoi huioi, that's definite, but it's nominative, right? Just the sons. Now we have here tois huiois, 2 or 4 the sons. So tois huiois is the right answer. Now we have 4, the brothers, subject. We'll just kind of put a big flashing neon sign, subject, right? Highlight that thing. This is what we want to see, right? I want to point out this is the subject. The brothers. All right, our first option, the brother, ha adelphos. Ha adelphos. Well, we know that's not right. It is a subject, and it is the brother, but it's singular. Tois adelphois. 2 or 4 the brothers. We know it's plural, like this is supposed to be, and it is definite, but it's not right. It's in the dative case, right? So that leaves us with only one option, hoi adelphoi. Sure enough, we've got our nominative plural, the brothers in the subject form, right? Now we know tous adelphus could also be the brothers, but it would be the direct object, and it would not be the subject. Now we have of the temple here in 5, to hiero, tu hieru, ta hieron. Right? Isn't it nice, by the way, that sometimes the homework includes the correct answer, right? We were wondering earlier, we had that review. Hieron, what was it, right? It's neuter. We know that because you have an example right down here. Ta hieron. All right. Of the temple. Well, we have our dative singular here. We know that one's not right because we know it's 2 or 4. We know this is either nominative or accusative, so it would just be the temple in either case, which means it must be tu hieru. And it's pretty easy to identify, right? We've already seen some genitives of heaven, right? Tu hieru, so not too bad. Now, in our last section here, we're just underlining second declension nouns that we've learned. And remember, those will be memorized in chapter 3. We had a little confusion in class, and that's okay. We're still kind of building the plane as we're flying it with some aspects of this. So we just want to be sure to clarify. We're only identifying words that we memorize, and oftentimes the vocab you need for the following chapter will be in the previous chapter. Line 1. Hoste kurios estin, ha huios tu anthropu, kai tu sabatu. Okay. Hoste kurios estin. What do we see? Some second declension nouns. We see kurios. We see huios. We see anthropos, right? We've got 3 right away. This one doesn't have an article. This one does. And so does this. We have the Son of Man. So that Lord is the Son of Man, even of the Sabbath. Probably smooth that out in English and say the Son of Man, so that the Son of Man, or therefore the Son of Man, is Lord even of the Sabbath. Okay. And then, of course, you have to parse and identify what these are. Kurios, we see that os ending here. We know it's a nominative singular. We have ha huios. This is also a nominative singular, and it's definite. We have tu anthropu. We have a masculine genitive singular here with the article. Easy to identify. And we also know, we recognize too, tu sabatu. We have another genitive singular as well. Now, and that's actually just Sabbath. All right. Line 2. Hein pra acusate entolago tesalathias tu euangelio. Okay, remember, we're just looking for the nouns that we've learned. We see right away, tolago. Actually, here's the first declension one, right? 2 or 4 the word of truth, right? We have a dative singular masculine. And then now we have tu euangelio. We have a neuter genitive singular. Neuter genitive singular of euangelion, right? So of the gospel. So 2 or 4 the word of truth of the gospel. Right there. And 3, kai exelthon ha Jesus apa tu hieru eparuata, kai praselthon hoi mathetai autu epidexai auto tas oikaramas tu hieru. All right, we got a longer sentence here. And again, a lot of stuff you haven't really learned yet, but right away we see a masculine, right? Ha, Jesus, right? And remember, it's very helpful to memorize the article with the word. I wasn't super consistent with that in seminary, and sometimes it haunts me. Ha, Jesus, apa tu hieru. So we got our first, it's a nominative masculine singular. We have tu hieru. We know we have a genitive neuter singular from hieron, right? So there's one we can identify. And then you might have noticed this, hoi mathetai. And you might say, are these modifying each other? The answer is yes. This article does belong to mathetai, but we'll talk about that later. The Greek, we're teaching you all these paradigms so that Greek can change the rules on you. It'd be really frustrating. Hoi mathetai, epidexai, auto, tas oikaramas, to here. There's hieru again, the neuter genitive singular. So really, you just need to identify this one, and this one, right? Now for the last one, en tuto phanera estin ta tekna tu theu, kai ta tekna tu diabolu. Pas ha me poion de kai asune uk estin ek tu theu, kai ha me agapon ta adelphon out too. We got one from First John here, and we see a couple right away. Ta tekna, right? We discussed that one before. We have a neuter plural, and this one actually is a nominative in this case, but it could be an accusative in other contexts. I know it's a nominative because we are dealing with a certain kind of construction here in Greek, but you don't know that yet. So ta tekna, tu theu. There's ha theos again, right in the masculine genitive singular, and then we have ta tekna, tu diabolu. Again, ta tekna, we know this is a neuter plural, could be accusative or nominative. In this case, it's a nominative. And again, there's reasons why we know that, but you guys haven't learned those things yet. And then over here, we have the article. We have ha, right? Just to note that is there. It's modifying this participle poion here, but you don't need to worry about that right now. And we have ha. There's a masculine nominative singular. Oh, and there's another word we learned, right? Tu theu, a masculine genitive singular. And then over here, ton adelphon. Ton adelphon. We have a masculine accusative singular from adelphos.